Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to this video. My name is Evan Schneider, and today we're going to be talking about my Tension LUT Pack. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of how I developed these LUTs and how I made them and my inspiration for the LUTs. And then I'm also going to be walking through how to use the LUTs in DaVinci Resolve. So whether you're interested in purchasing these LUTs and you want to know more, or if you already bought them and you want to know how to use them, or if you're just kind of interested in the teal and orange look in movies and cinema in general, keep watching because I have a lot of information to share with you. So to better understand kind of what I'm referring to when I talk about the teal and orange look, I've grabbed a bunch of stills from a bunch of different movies, and a lot of these are from the website filmgrab.com. Definitely check that out if you're looking for color grading inspiration. We can use these to get a reference of kind of what kind of tones we're looking to build in our color grade. You can see this one is from Casino Royale. We have some Fast and Furious, Transformers, Jurassic World, a lot of Roger Deakins. Roger Deakins is kind of one of the kings of natural teal and orange. He really loves to build that into his color grades. And you can see that some of it is due to the color grade and a lot of it is due to the production design. And what they've done is intensify those colors in the color grade. So you can see the windshield is pushing blue. The car is pushing a little more orangey yellow. This frame in Jurassic World, you can see that we're really pushing the colors into that palette. So we have a really warm sky, and then we have really blue shadows, and the greens are pushing kind of a tealish color. We also have this frame down here where the actor is wearing a blue shirt, and then the shadows are pushed towards blue, and the highlights are pushed a bit warmer to create that nice color contrast between the shadows and the skin and the highlights. These frames from Fast and Furious are also a great example of cooler shadows offsetting the warm skin tones and really making them pop. So the goal here is to basically do a tasteful teal and orange. We want it to still be natural, but to push those colors and tones into the complementary colors of teal and orange. So to illustrate this, I have my vector scope here, and with all of these different frames pulled up, you can kind of see where all of the colors are falling. The middle represents white or 0, and then the outside represents all the different colors, but they're all kind of falling into the two quadrants on the top for orange and then on the bottom for teal. There's almost no colors in magenta or like a cooler blue, and you can see our skin tones are kind of falling right around here. So the skin tones are still accurate. So that makes this look really easy to push really far, because as long as your skin tones are accurate, you can kind of move all of the colors around them to fit it into a really tight color palette. So each of the tension LUTs kind of plays on a few of these different elements in different ways. So there's varying levels of how much it cools the shadows, how much it warms the highlights, the tone curve, the skin tones. So this is just a normal Rec. 709 converted image. This was shot on the Arri Alexa 35. So Tension 1 is kind of just a base look. It's one of my favorite looks. It pushes the highlights warmer, cools the shadows, creates a nice tone curve. And then it's also, you can see on the vector scope here, it's kind of pushing everything into those different quadrants that we saw with the example frames. So these are all the example frames, and then this is our frame. Tension 2 kind of lowers the highlights a little bit. Tension 3 is a little bit brighter. Tension 4 is a little bit cooler. Tension 5 is a little bit more of a natural look. Tension 6 is kind of a warmer version of Tension 1, and then Tension 7 is kind of a cooler version of Tension 1. Tension 8 has a pretty toned down tone curve, so it's not adding a ton of contrast, but it kind of pushes everything a little bit more towards the green side in terms of skin tones. And then Tension 9 is a little bit more on the magenta side of skin tones with a little bit more contrast. Tension 10 is probably one of the stronger looks in the pack. It definitely is more desaturated, more of a serious tone, a little bit warmer highlights or neutral shadows, and it just creates a really overall kind of high contrast image. So on this clip, I'm going to share just a really basic, simple workflow that you can use when you're using these LUTs. And I like to create two different nodes in DaVinci Resolve. And so the second node is going to be where we put our LUT. So I'm going to label that LUT. And then the first node is going to be labeled primary. For this one, I think maybe Tension 8 would work really well, but we can kind of click through and see how they're affecting the image. So you can see each one has a different balance of highlights and shadows and warmness and coolness. So clicking through all those, I think I would say I like Tension 3 on this shot the best. So we're going to go to that one, and you can see that it's pushing the tones into those complementary colors. It's warming the highlights a little bit, and then it's bringing some coolness into the shadows, and it's kind of pumping a little bit of color into the footage as well. If we want to increase the amount of color contrast that's happening, we can increase the saturation before the LUT, and you can see that I'm pushing more of those colors into the footage on the vector scope. Then we can use our gamma or our offset wheel and kind of push it around. And the goal is to kind of straddle this middle point. So have some tones here, some tones there. And you can see now we're bringing out a little bit more skin tone, but we're offsetting it with the cool shadows and the highlights in the background that are kind of a blue light. We can play around with that and see how we feel about it. Maybe we'll dial back the contrast a little bit, or the saturation, and then bring up the gamma so we can see the shadows a little bit more. And you can see in just those two steps, we've gone from this to this. So this is our LUT before and after, and then this is our primary correction before and after. So in those two steps, we've created a really nice teal and orange natural look with these LUTs. Here's another example of a fairly neutral background. But I wanted to show you this because it does have a little bit of green tones creeping in around. So for this one, I'm just going to do Tension 1. And you can see instantly that it's kind of pushed our tones into the proper quadrants. And it's also cooled down our shadows and then warmed up the highlights a little bit, which creates a really nice color contrast. So this is a perfect shot for kind of a commercial project or maybe a documentary or something like that where you want to intensify the emotion and kind of refine the color palette. This clip is an example of one that has a lot of different colors. It's a daytime bright exterior. And so if we apply Tension 1 to this footage, you can see how it really brings those colors in. And then we can create a new node before. So this is going to be my primary adjustment. And I can just bring the gain down to bring those shadows down and to create more contrast. And so just with those two steps, this is our LUT, and then this is our primary adjustment. And it still looks nice, but it's raised the intensity of the footage. This is an example of some really kind of reddish skin tones and how this LUT can refine them. And it pushes it straight into a really nice teal and orange tone, maybe Tension 10, it pushes it a little bit green, makes it feel a little bit more unsettling. This is another exterior shot with a lot of different colors. This one I chose because it shows how the green tones are really affected by the LUTs. So let's do Tension 1, and you can see that it really squeezes those green tones in, makes them nice and warm, and they're offset by the cool shadows. So it creates this really nice cinematic tone that's not overpowering, but it really refines the colors into that color palette. This shot is kind of more of a commercially look, so I wanted to show you kind of not on a super cinematic or dark and moody shot. But in this shot, I notice the colors are kind of going everywhere. There's a lot of green in the background that could be distracting if you want it to fit into that nice color palette. So let's try tension 8. And you can see as I do that, it brings all of the colors in and then puts it into that nice color palette. We can play with some other ones to see what we like. Maybe 4 is looking pretty nice. I like the red shirt and the blue pillows. And if we wanted to, we could bring the key output down to kind of lessen the effect. That looks pretty nice to me. And so we've kind of refined the colors into a specific color palette. It's fitting into that kind of subtle teal and orange look naturally by itself. Here's one more example of just a nighttime exterior where the talent's face is being lit by a street light. And so tension 10 works really good for this kind of look. And at first it's a little bit dark, but we can always go back, create a new node before, and just bring up the gain and then bring up the gamma a little bit. So this is our primary, and then this is what our LUT is doing to the footage. We have a really nice natural teal and orange look happening. Here's an example of how the LUTs kind of work with skin tones and also green tones in the footage. So I'm gonna apply tension 1, and you can see that it's pushing the green tones a lot cooler, and then it's pushing the red tones, into around that skin tone line. And it's creating a really dramatic mood and contrast. And with this shot, I want to show you just how clean these LUTs are, because even though that's kind of a dramatic adjustment, when I play it back, you can see that it's perfectly clean. We're not seeing any color tearing or banding or noise or anything like that. It's very gentle on the footage, how it's pushing it into the teal and orange look. This is kind of a result of how I developed the LUTs. The main kind of DNA of the look is a YUV RGB transform. And basically I use that to kind of shift the colors into the proper color palette. And you're not going to see that in a lot of other LUT packs where they're using a lot of qualifiers, color warpers, hue versus hue, all of that kind of stuff that is really damaging to the footage. It's very gentle on the footage, but it creates a really dramatic effect. So on this shot, we can just kind of go through all the different LUTs as well. And you can see how they kind of vary different skin tones. Like tension 3 kind of keeps more of the variation of, the blush tone, and then the highlights push a little warmer green. And then going through these, you can just see the different variations of the look and how they affect the mood and the tone of the footage. The other thing you can do in Resolve is if you want to change the intensity of the look, you can go to this palette right here, the key palette, and then go to key output, and you can just drag the gain up and down. And you can kind of see on the vector scope as I do that. So this is 0, and you can kind of see the transformation that it's doing. So if you don't want it to be doing that much to your footage, you could set it to maybe 0.7, and then that's having a little bit of a different effect. If you want it to be really subtle, you could go to 40%, just give it a little bit of a pop. Last thing I want to show you is that with this LUT applied, just kind of looking at all of our other visual references, you can see that these skin tones and the shadows and everything really fall in the same color palette as all of these other frames from the movies. If I flip through here, you can see kind of how they're balancing with everything. And it really feels like they fit in the overall palette that we're trying to create. I spent a lot of time developing these LUTs, thinking through the best way to do it, and wanting them to be as useful as possible for you to achieve the teal and orange look that isn't overpowering, that's natural, and that makes your footage look the best that it possibly can while maintaining the integrity of the original colors. The beauty of these LUTs is that they work with any camera, so whatever you're shooting with, you know that these LUTs will look good on your footage. And if you're shooting in log, like I said, you have to convert to Rec. 709 before applying these LUTs, and that's kind of a general basic, popular workflow for working with log footage anyways. There's no problem with using 2 LUTs in the same pipeline. If you're interested in purchasing these LUTs, go to lutcompany.com and you can purchase the LUTs there. If you've already bought them, thank you for the purchase, and I hope this video was helpful to get you started. And hopefully you learned a little bit more about how the teal and orange look works in movies and cinema. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.